You're listening to the Staging Sips podcast with Lori Fisher. This podcast is dedicated to helping real estate staging CEOs build healthy businesses that grow, flow, and thrive. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the podcast. I am so happy to be with you as always, and I'm super happy to share something which is so cool. Two things which are so cool and so related to the topics that we have been talking about over the last several episodes about our keep in touch plan and why it is so important, and not listening to your brain sending you all kinds of things that stop you from keeping in touch. So the first one is, we have a beautiful new student inside of the Accelerate program who joined us for her first live coaching call this past week. And she shared that she feels like I'm her sister because she listens to the podcast on a daily basis. So, hey, Theo, so happy that you are listening. My sister from another mister. Yes, I did just say that. Oh my gosh, I'm so corny. Anyway, so that was the first thing I thought was really cool, because how would I know, like sitting here recording this podcast week after week after week, that I was having not only an impact in her business in that real time, but that then she would make the commitment to herself and her business to join Accelerate to learn even further. I don't know that. What I do is I show up in service and in contribution and hope that what I'm saying resonates and that the person who wants to work with me chooses to work with me. That is the essence of this whole keep in touch plan, is just showing up in service week after week. So that's the first cool thing that happened. The second one was that I have gotten not one review, but now 2 reviews from Estella at Stell House Staging and Design. So if you are on Instagram, you've got to go follow Estella at Stell House. We'll put her Instagram profile in the show notes. It's a beautiful Instagram page. You do beautiful work, Estella. So Estella wrote a review way back at the beginning of the podcast, and then she just updated it in this past week. And she wrote, "The podcast that keeps on giving so much valuable information, reassurance, pep talks, and motivation. Lori, how do you fit all this in a show? Thank you for all your episodes, but particularly keeping in touch in a non-salesy way. I so relate to so many things you said. Sometimes I feel I'm in growth, the next day Accelerate, and then back to growth. Your episode keeps me motivated." Well, I am so thrilled that it is keeping you going and motivated and on it. The whole purpose of me showing up every week. And I just thank you so much for taking the time to write not 1, but 2 reviews, Estella. It means so much to me. So anyway, all this to say that when you are out and you are coming from a place of contribution, thinking about the people about you, it will keep you motivated to keep creating the habit of staying in touch. Remember, we're creating habits before we create results. That is huge for you to remember. And if you take away nothing else from these episodes about keeping in touch, that is probably the biggest one. So let me just recap a little bit. Like last week, we touched on some of the things that your brain is going to do as you start to keep in touch. And it will come up as you start to batch create content if you choose the strategy. And I think you should. We'll talk about why. But your brain will show up with thoughts about that will try to keep you safe and small, keep you from sending out the email, creating the social media post, like sitting down to do that work. I will tell you, every time I sit down to do a social media post in particular, and I don't know why it's social media only, but my brain will say, is this the highest and best use of my time? Every single time. It feels frivolous. It feels weird. I could spend hours creating this podcast, and I could spend hours creating emails. I never have that thought. It is always when I'm on social media, which I think is so fascinating, because social media is part of a very valuable keep in touch process, right? So that is a thought that I have that I now am aware of, and that I have to counter with, I'm here to contribute. And there are people here that will hear the contribution in a way that they won't hear it in the podcast or the email, right? Like I've got to create intentional thoughts for that. You will also have an expectation gap. As you sit to batch create content and content in general, you will have an expectation gap between how much content you really need and how long it will take to take your audience from that getting known through the getting noticed phase, which is what we're in, to the getting new clients, right? The getting known is super, super easy. That's your one-off presentation. That's your networking event. That might be a live that you do. This keep in touch is that getting known part where you're going to continue to be in people's inboxes or in their feeds or, in their podcast downloads, right? Like you've got to keep showing up, because when people are going to ultimately make the decision to buy, now you'll have people that never decide to buy. You will have people that consume your information and they may choose to work with another company or like just don't need staging, right? But there are people there who will. And some people you may create a client today, or you may create a client 3 years from now. You just don't know. I recently told my students in Accelerate that I had an investor on my email list for 3 years before he ever reached out for staging. And what he tried to do was sell his houses without staging for a very long time. And I actually shared with them, he did this whole amazing testimonial for me, talking about what a difference it made once he finally decided to work with us, and that he even tested his results. Like, it was very fascinating to see this thing, but it was because I was in touch with him for 3 years. I was top of mind when he was looking for a staging company. And to be honest, you all are in a totally different boat than I am, in that there's a lot more competition now. So if your name keeps popping up and where your prospective clients are, and you're nurturing that relationship and you're always sharing valuable information, it will come back to you, because they're going to remember you versus company A through Z, right? That aren't keeping in touch. We cannot be ghosting our people. So you may have an expectation gap. And the last thing is, you may experience friction getting going, friction keeping going. Your brain is going to say, this isn't worth it. It's not showing results. And I have just shown you by those 2 results with Theo and Estella that there are people out there who are feeling your pouring out of contribution into their lives. They are experiencing results. They are thinking about you and appreciating you, whether they take the time to share that or not. Because for every Theo and Estella, I'm sure there are people out there now, maybe it's you, that you feel like what I've brought to you is super valuable. You've learned a lot. You've implemented a lot in your businesses. It's helping you, but you haven't shared that with me directly. And that's okay. You don't have to, but I need to create the thoughts that there are tons of Theo and Estella's out there waiting to hear from me, because my goal is to improve staging businesses, period, right? Like, period, the end. So I'm going to keep going. So anyway, and we also talked about small and consistent, right? And this batching process is no different. We want to create small goals that we can implement consistently. We want to focus on one platform, get it up and humming, get that process going, and then another. And that we want to block time on the calendar to make things happen, right? And we want to block time on our calendar to create our batched content. And we want to continue, because essentially we want to do this batching so that we can continue to go out and continue to get noticed. We want to be out with the people, right? We're in-person businesses. So we want to make sure that we are continuing to go out and be seen. We can't be behind our computers all the time. We want to be creating clients, not necessarily content. So batching can really help us do that, right? So what exactly is batching? Well, batching is basically breaking down a large task into smaller ones and then getting into the zone on each task. And I had first heard about this concept. It was back probably 7 years ago. In fact, yes, it was 7 years ago, because my son was a freshman at McGill University in Montreal, and I was on the treadmill in the morning before we were heading to go grab him for breakfast. And I was listening to Amy Porterfield's online Business Made Easy podcast. I think that's what it's called. She still has it. It's an amazing podcast. Highly recommend it. We'll put it in the show notes. But I originally heard about this concept of batching from her. And I literally had to keep stopping on the treadmill to throw some notes into my note section of my phone, because I couldn't believe like how smart this was. And at the time I was writing a blog, and I felt like my blog was consuming my life every single week. It was just on and on and on. And I wanted to figure out a way to not have to do my blog. And it's so funny because I realized like I'm a total batch person. I like to batch my laundry. I don't like to do laundry every single day of the week. I like to batch it for my weekends. Like I knock it all out on Sundays typically. And when I can't, then I've got 2 Sundays worth of laundry to have to do. But like I, in general, am a batching kind of personality. And again, if you're not like, maybe give it a try because there's actual really good brain science, neuroscience behind this because you can literally batch anything in your business. And, I haven't talked about it in a very long time on the podcast, but I was a pre-med major. And so I'm really into neuroscience. I'm into mindset, which is the thoughts we create, but I'm also into neuroscience, like work with our brain's natural tendency, right? So batching works beautifully with our brains because by organizing tasks that require similar cognitive effort into batches, you minimize the mental load and the switching costs associated with jumping between different types of tasks. And switching costs essentially means that every time you switch to a new task, it can take your brain up to 15 minutes to regain focus and then get humming and into the zone on that particular task, especially creative work. Your brain needs time to get into the zone creatively. And the benefits that have been shown from batching are beautiful. They're things we all want. It reduces stress because we've reduced our mental load and that cognitive switching. We increase our productivity because we're not losing that 15 minutes of ramp up time over and over and over again. It boosts creativity because our brain can finally get into flow. And that is the last benefit, better flow. So better workflow on what you are doing. So I am circling back to batching in order to get the Staging Business School Instagram account up and running. We have, inconsistently been growing Instagram, mostly because we've been working on getting the podcast delivery system down, like totally tight, which we have. I started by creating my system and process for how I wanted the podcast to go. And then starting at the end of last year, hired our amazing podcast manager, Deborah. And between Deborah and Renee, my 2 virtual assistants, we have got the system in so tight that there have been times that many times recently, that I've not gotten my content created in a super timely way, but they are still managing to get that podcast loaded so that you have it on your Saturday mornings, you have your email on Sunday mornings. Like we've really dialed that in. So the Staging Sips podcast is one of my keep in touch activities. So I have got that up and humming pretty much at this point. Now I've got 63 episodes under my belt. You hopefully don't need to take 63 weeks of time to get that done for what you're going to do, right? Like you don't take as long as I'm taking right now. But hopefully not. But I am now ready to create my second keep in touch platform vehicle. And that is Instagram. I'm thinking now, especially with ManyChat being a way to grow my email list further, that I will be using Instagram as my next keep in touch vehicle. So I'm coming back to batching because I need to be super efficient about it. And the way that my brain works, again, is I like to learn how to do the process myself and then slot somebody in to give me support to get that done. I've learned over the years that sometimes you can hire an expert and they will create a system for you to do something. But if it doesn't work for you as the business owner, that can be a real struggle. I've had people have me change platforms with the way I do things only to switch right back to other software and things like that. So what I really want to do is I want to understand what my process is so that even if I hire somebody else and they've got a different process, if for whatever reason I need to let them go, they go on vacation, they have an illness, their businesses aren't functioning as efficiently as they need to be, I can pick the reins back up or I can slot somebody in a lot easier because I have the system in place. So anyway, I'm going to walk you through my thought process of how I will go and batch content for my new Keep in Touch platform. So again, I've already identified that it's Instagram, and I'm choosing to develop my system in Instagram essentially because, like I said, we're already in your inboxes each week, and I want to continue to grow my email list, and Instagram seems like a really good place to do that. So when I'm thinking about batching systems for doing things, I want to break it into, like we were saying, for batching, the smallest steps possible. So for Instagram, I have the options of creating reels, carousels, static posts, and stories. And the experts tell us we need to mix that up, right? But my goal is simply to create a habit first. And I'm going to choose to focus on reels, which then I can post in stories. And the reason for this is that to me feels like the least friction for me, because now with the advent of using B-roll, where you're just filming yourself in your daily life or your daily out and about and your daily on-site stuff, that seems pretty easy. I'm not great at taking still photographs, but heck, I can take a video. And graphics are a lot harder for me. I spend way too much time creating graphics for like a static post or a carousel. So I don't really want to spend any time on that. So it's much easier for me to create B-roll video and direct to camera, like me talking video, than trying to create images. So that's my selection for Reels. So in Reels, I need the following things. I need a hook, I need a caption, I need video, and I need music, right? So that is kind of the breakdown of that. So for me, the video and the music is easy. It's usually the hook and the caption that get me tripped up. So that's where I'm going to be working on batching. My goal is simply to produce 1 to 2 reels a week. And I know that every Instagram guru will tell you should post every day so you get really good at it and all of that. I simply need to create a goal that is super small, super doable, so that my brain encourages me to keep going. So if I've hit 1 reel per week that week, I've hit my goal. And I'm going to be okay with that until I get better at doing reels, because like the pace that I go right now, it feels like it takes hours to get 1 reel done for me. It's like so long. So we also need a tool, right? We talked about you want to have a tool or a place where you can plan for your keep in touch, like by identifying your client, who they are, how you help, what are the things that you do, what are the intangibles you offer, what are the tangibles you offer, right? So what's the tool that you're going to use to keep that? So for me, the tool I've chosen is a spreadsheet with hooks and captions, and I'm actually going to share that with you in the show notes. I'm going to share with you an example that you can copy and use of just what that spreadsheet looks like. So I have that ready so that I can begin to batch create my hooks and captions. Then I'm going to decide if I want to edit in Instagram or Canva. I find right now I prefer the graphics of Canva, but I prefer actually to build in Instagram. And the reason for that is if I'm trying to get efficient, I can preview faster what I've done right inside the Instagram app and see immediately if like the text is getting too cut off or it's too small or something like that. Whereas in Canva, I need to take the time to download that video and then upload it, only to find out that, you know, like my profile name across the bottom is cutting off half of the text, or the hearts and shares and whatever save menu on the right hand side is cutting off my text. So that is time consuming. So I think what I'm going to do is be okay with the text, the font not being my favorite, and simply using Instagram to create my reels. Okay. So that's kind of the background that I've got for you. So here's my current batch plan, and it's going to look different for everybody. And it may look different for me after I work on implementing this, because like everything else, it's experimentation. It's experimentation about what works best for you, what doesn't work for you, what can you tweak, what can you do better. So you're seeing my experiment happen in real time. So the first week of the month is going to be my batch week for my content. Now, we have done a lot over the past to try to align with the podcast episodes. I'm not going to stress about that so much because I just really want to create and not have to worry if I don't actually know what my podcast content will be for the week. I'm certain we always have an audiogram created that will be an automatic story that I can use right off the bat for a story. We don't tend to use them in our feed because they don't frankly get as many views. So we're going to put those in the stories. So that will be my kind of aligned with the podcast topic. But moving forward, I'm just going to be brainstorming ideas and creating whatever I want, not based around the podcast. So anyway, what I want to do is my goal is to create 12 reels total in that first week of the month. And the reason why I want to create 4 more than I actually need, right? My goal is 1 to 2, but I want to create like 3 because I want to be ahead. I want to start creating a bank of being ahead so that then, if I miss a month because of, we're traveling and on vacation that week and I don't get to do it, I still have a bank that I can have ready to go. So Monday and Tuesday are going to be my hook and captions day. I don't know yet if I'm just going to do hooks on Monday and captions on Tuesday, or if it feels right to do hooks and captions together in the same setting. Because sometimes I create a hook and then I go back and I'm like, what did I mean by that? So I'm going to see how that works for me. So I'm going to be open to what that looks like until I figure out what works best for my brain. Then on Friday is when I'll have the creative creation, as it were, and I will create and schedule at that time. So that way I am creating the hardest part for me in the very beginning, which is literally like, what is the reel going to be about? And what are the bullet points or the caption or whatever that I want to put in there? Because I'm really, like I said, I'm really comfortable with like uploading the video, adding the sound, and then I get stuck. I'm like, okay, now what? What do I do now? Right. So anyway, that's how I'm batching my content. So again, you can see I've created a very small goal that I definitely can hit in the beginning. I chose one platform and I'm choosing one aspect of that platform. I'm not making myself do every kind of content. My content may look exactly the same every single time for a little while. I'm okay with that. It's creating the habit of being in touch with you all over there that is most important to me, that I'm providing value and that you are gleaning something from that, right? And I want to reduce the friction. So I want to reduce the decision fatigue right now in this early stage. I'm making it super, super doable. And then, so with that in mind, that I've created my goal, I've understood my platform, I have my tool that I'm going to use for my batching, then I'm going to start batching the actual content. And it's funny because I feel like what I've been doing is like what homeowners want to do, which is they always want to paint a room first and then design. Whereas we in the design and staging world are always like, no, you choose your paint color last after you figured out the design and the color palette that you want to use inside the room. And I think for me, what I've been doing is painting first by uploading the video and getting the music ready. I have not given myself the opportunity to like really figure out what the messages I want for those. So I've been doing the easiest part, but never getting to the end part. So I'm reversing it. I'm flipping it on my brain. And I think what is going to happen is that when I get going creating hooks, I'll probably create many more than 12 in a sitting. The captions will likely take a bit longer, but then I'm growing that bank of all of that. And I only need to create at this point 12 reels, but I may have many more hooks and everything. So I may be getting ahead of having like really good ideas that can last me for months and months and months, if that makes sense, right? Like, cause if I get into flow, I think I literally in the last session I sat to create hooks. I think I created like 15 hooks or something. So I hit more than my 12, right? So anyway, that's just how I'm doing it. And then daily, what I would like to be doing is 15 minutes of interaction with my followers first thing in the morning. I have a very bad habit of waking up and going right to Instagram to like scroll and consume. And that time can be scrolling and consuming what all y'all are doing, but also like giving you the high five or like thanking you for contributing so that I'm learning something from you guys, right? Like, so I'm going to be planning to do that for the first 15 minutes each day of the week. So that's kind of all of the lay of the land. So why am I working in this way? Obviously, productivity, keeping in touch is one of the highest priorities to fill my pipeline of potential students for staging business school. Right. So I'm like in this with you, growing a business right alongside you. So if any of you who are in your first couple of years of business, I haven't forgotten what it looks like to have to get the momentum rolling on a business. I'm right there with you. So it is my highest priority. So with the time that I'm given, I need to be keeping in touch. Social media in particular is probably, and keeping in touch with, one of the last things you would likely to be outsourcing, because you really want people to be able to capture your voice, your brand, all of that. And that can take some time, and that can take a body of work for people to even be able to see and hear how you communicate with your prospective clients. And again, as a business owner, we really have to maximize our marketing time because it's one of the many hats we wear. In the beginning of our businesses, we are pretty much only doing marketing. But as we begin to hit the accelerate phase, we become much busier on site in the operations of the business, the implementation of the business. So like you're part of the production team, you're managing operations, you're managing people, like you're every level. So if you have limited time to produce, keep in touch, touch points, then we need to get really efficient at it. And of course, we have so many other competing priorities because we are still expected to stay on top of reviewing our financials, reviewing our insurances, staying up to date, like making sure that the website doesn't crash. Like there's all these other things, keeping up with maintenance on vehicles. If you have vehicles, maybe it's like looking for new storage space. We have all those other competing priorities. So that's one of the things. Like I said, I'm working in this way because hooks and captions are the one place my brain loves to get stuck. And so ramping up time, like I'm super unproductive doing anything. So I need that time to sit and focus strictly on those hooks and captions. And it'll help me create better messaging when I'm able to really sit and focus on it. So that's kind of why I'm doing that. Why did I choose the Reels video? Again, told you my brain knows I have one thing to focus on IG, and that's taking B-roll. I don't have to really focus on anything else. And deciding ahead of time if I am working in Canva or Instagram, again, minimizes my brain fatigue. I have tried over the years, I'm like, oh, I'll try CapCut and I'll try this and I'll try that. And I am always like, oh, but I want to use captions, so I'll use captions over here. Enough. Like it's enough. I'm choosing one thing to focus on it well, and then I can introduce the next level of reel. So if I get really good at doing B-roll reels, then I'm going to add, me to facing the camera. That's kind of my thought process. And then that will just help me, again, to minimize fatigue on what platform I'm using. So that's a lot right there. So what other keep in touch activities can you batch? Let's get out of my batching thought process. You can schedule coffee dates. You can batch those. You can send out multiple invitations on a single day if that's something that you want to use as part of your keep in touch platform. Following up with emails to your networking contacts, that can happen on a given day where you create multiple emails and you schedule those out. In Gmail, you can schedule those right out to people. Keeping in touch, writing emails to your email list. All of those, of course, can get scheduled to go out as well. Creating your social media content, creating a list of Facebook posts that are ideas that you'd like to contribute a value to a group you're in, right? So if you're in an investors group, you can sit and on a Google document, write all the posts that you think you're going to do, or a scheduling app that you can do Meta scheduling suite. I don't even know. That to me is a nightmare. Meta's scheduling thing. I don't understand it, but you can create a Google document where you just create all the posts that you think you're going to share. Actually, you can't schedule into a group, so you'd need to put them in a Google document. So you can contribute on a regular basis. You can batch create videos. You can reach out to schedule webinars and presentations in a batch format, right? You just spend time a day batching, reaching your outreach, right? That's part of your keep in touch. Creating topic ideas for if you go live, if that's something that you love to do. So you literally can batch anything. But my recommendation is you start with one batch and you get that rolling, and then you move on to your next. So it's like creating a priority for what you want, how you want to keep in touch, what's the campaign you want to work on, and then building the batch process, building the system for it, and moving forward. So I hope that was not like, it feels like I kind of gave you a huge gulp and not a sip, but I'm really excited about getting back and getting into the batching process. And I'm excited to share with you how the experiment works. I will provide updates as I go, where I'll probably tell you, okay, this worked, this didn't work. You're always going to be evaluating your processes and your experiments. So this is one experiment. And if you are wanting to take it with me, like, I'd love that. Reach out and tell me what you're going to be batching, because I'm excited to hear how it works. So again, that is your sip for the week, your gulp for the week. I hope you have a wicked good week moving forward, and I will see you next time on The Sips. Bye for now. Thank you so much for listening to the Staging Sips podcast. If you love what you've learned here today, please take a minute to rate and review it so more staging business owners can find us. And if you want to learn more about how to market and grow your staging business more strategically, I'd love to see you join us inside of the Rethink You Accelerate Mentorship Program. It is open enrollment. You can get more details at rethinkhomeinteriors.com/rethinkyou. Would love to see you inside.